everyone. Thank you all for being here today. We'll get started here in a couple of minutes. Before we get started, just a couple of reminders for you guys. We will take questions in the chat, so if you'll put those in throughout the today's session, we'll try and get to those a little bit towards the middle and then end with some questions as well. If you guys wouldn't mind muting your mics, that'd be very helpful on our end. Like I said, we will get started here in about 2 minutes. Let everyone kind of get joined. Again, on behalf of everyone that's here, our panelists, and then as well as college sport communicators, thank you guys so much for coming out today. Really means a lot. We're excited. We got 2 sessions today and we got 2 tomorrow as well, with one of them being a pre-recorded video that will be sent out later on. We're just really excited that you guys are taking the time to do this. I know the summer schedule is pretty busy for everyone. You got a lot of things going on, vacation, just finished school, you're wanting a break. So really awesome. It means a lot that you guys are taking the time to come on here and try and learn a little bit more. So in 1 minute, we will get started. All right, y'all, let's go. We have a great group today. I'm excited for you all to be able to hear them. Thank you guys for joining us today. Welcome to the 2023 CSC camp. Sorry, Barb, just saw your message. I will keep an eye on that. I'm going to start over. Good day and welcome to everyone. Thank you guys for joining us as we start the first day of the 2023 CSCU camp. We're really excited about everything that we have to offer throughout these next 2 days with 4 different sessions. Should be really good. We have a lot of great speakers, and so we're really thankful that you guys are taking the time to come out and be a part of this. Today's first session is how to organize and plan your office work week. This is the first of 3 live sessions in this year's camp, which is hosted by College Sport Communicators CSCU committee. Our goal as that committee is to assist new communications professionals, both undergraduate and graduate students, or even interns who are looking to get started in this field and make a career out of it, and just trying to give you guys as much education sessions as possible to help prepare you all. Our motto is educate educators and then find our future. Again, thank you for joining us. My name is Josh Lively. I am an assistant media relations director for the University of Tennessee, and I will be serving today as our moderator. I'm a member of the CSCU committee, and we're really excited about the program that we've come up with. We have a really great group and really good ideas. We're excited for you guys to be able to see that. Like I said beforehand, we welcome your guys' questions at any time. Just put them in the chat and we'll get to them when we can. We're going to take some during the middle of the panel, and then we'll take a little bit more on the back end as we close things out. As a reminder for you guys, our session is being recorded, as will all of them throughout the weekend or throughout the week. That will be up on our live demand session for the website on CSCU as well as YouTube. So you guys can go back and watch that at any point. Or if you want to share this with other people who you work with or interns with, that'd be awesome as well. Well, guys, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to have our guest panelists introduce themselves. We'll go with JD, then Keonte, and then Rachel.
My name is JD Campbell. I'm the Senior Assistant AD for Basketball Communications and Special Projects at Indiana, and I just completed my 16th year here. This is my 37th year in the profession, and I started off at Johnson County Community College in Overland Park, Kansas, went from there to Northern Kentucky University, which was Division II at the time, now Division I, followed by going back to Kansas to Emporia State, headed to Bowling Green for 7 years, and then came to Indiana as I'm finishing out my career here. So I've got a lot of background and I've been at all levels. So I certainly understand all the challenges from the highest Power 5 to being a one-person shop that can't hardly get any coverage from the local media. So use me as a resource. Here to answer anything that I've been through, and looking forward to this panel.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning to my West Coast people. My name is Keonte Herrera. I'm the Assistant Communications Director at LSU. I've been here for wrapping up my second season, and like JD, I have worked at a number of different divisions across the college athletics landscape, beginning at the Division II level. Then I went to a mid-major before coming here at LSU. So very excited about this panel. Very excited that you all joined and made the investment in yourselves to get better. So looking forward to a great meeting.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rachel Moore, and I'm the Assistant Athletic Director and Director of Athletic Communications at Central Methodist University. We are an NAIA school located in Fayette, Missouri, which is right smack dab in the middle, not too far from Mizzou and Columbia. I originally started out, I was a graduate assistant at Baker University, which is actually in the same conference as Central Methodist. I did 2 years of graduate work with them as well as my undergrad. So I did 4 years kind of the unconventional way because I did junior college before. But after that, I then took on an assistant SID position at Division I Texas A&M Corpus Christi in South Texas. So like Keonte and JD, I've also got a little bit of that Division I experience. And from there, I moved into a director's role, an assistant athletic director's role here at Central Methodist, where I just finished up my third year. So I'm excited to talk with you guys today and excited to get started.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you all joining us today as part of this panel. You guys are awesome. You have a great background. I'm really excited for you guys to be able to share some of your knowledge and experience with our up and coming generation. So before we get started, I want to kind of explain a little bit about how our session is going to work. Like I said, we're going throughout the work week. And so with that has a little bit of a unique layout that we decided to go with. We're going to break things down by day of the week. So Monday through Friday, each day we'll have a topic. But one of the things I want to kind of emphasize on is that there are a few things you need to know before we get started, just to have in your mind as we go throughout each day. The first thing is that each day is fluid. All these topics could realistically be any day. They're not solely, if we say something's Monday, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be Monday for everybody. All three of our panelists can attest that they probably have different schedules based on their sports, their time of the year. Every day's fluid. So just understand that if we say something's on Monday, doesn't necessarily mean that that's when it's going to be for every single day. Secondly, each topic is important. There are some topics that are more important than others, and you'll kind of feel that as you see an emphasis from our panelists, but every topic that we're going to talk about is important equally to your role as a college sport communicator and what you need to do. So just because something's on Friday and it's at the very end doesn't mean we're rushing to say it. It's just that's when it fell within the week, but it's equally as important. And then finally, each week is different. So you have to be flexible in this industry. And if you haven't figured that out yet, you're going to really soon, because just no week is the same in this industry. And we don't even get close to covering all the topics that you're going to see through each day. So just because we say these doesn't mean that there's not something else that's out there that's also important. These are just kind of what we came up with to talk about for today. The big thing with that is just being ready for the inevitable unknown that's going to come with each week, and how some of these things may on one day be planned for a Tuesday, get bumped to Wednesday because something more important occurs on a Tuesday. So take that and keep that knowledge as we're going throughout each day. But with that, let's go ahead and jump in and get started. And with that, we are on Monday. While every day is important, Monday is probably your most important day of the week per structure of how we're going to frame it, because it's your chance to plan out your week, figure out everything that needs to happen, what needs to be scheduled, your meetings. It is just your day to get organized. And with our industry, organization is key. You have to stay ahead on things and know what you need to take care of. Otherwise, you'll fall behind pretty easily. And with that, I want to ask all three of our panelists. We'll begin with JD, then go to Keonte, and then Rachel, to explain just what is your mindset when you're going through a Monday, and what is it that you deem are like your most important things as an SID to take care of every single Monday to make sure that you are set up for success for the rest of the week?
Well, Josh, the first thing that I do, and I subscribe to this every day, I'm a walk around guy. I try to make sure that I get over to the men's basketball office at some point, having an idea of their schedule. Maybe they're reviewing film from 10:30 to noon. So that means I need to come over about 10 or 9:30 or whatever. But I find that FaceTime with my coaches is really important, because a lot of times we get in a situation where communication may not make it to us when we really need something. And I think by having FaceTime with your coaches every day, that can eliminate some of that stuff where you get surprised and things like that. And I think more or less Monday's the start of the week. So when we've got basketball, we know we have a radio show Monday night. We know that we play Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, and we know we play Saturday or Sunday. And so we get done with what we got done before, and now we're ready for a new week.
Before I, give one of my Monday things, I wanted to ask, can I ask a question real quick to JD?
Absolutely.
So what would you say when you're in a position and you are having multiple sports? Are you visiting both sports coach every day? Are you more so focusing on just your in-season coach, so on?
What I tried to do is I would really work with my in-season coaches and then get an idea for, let's say in the fall, I'm talking to my cross-country coach, I'm talking to my soccer coach, the volleyball coach, the football coach. I'm getting the FaceTime with them, and then I'll stop by maybe once or twice a week to just knock on the door of the basketball coach. Hey, everything going okay? That's what I tried to do. And for me, it was very different in two of my jobs, because I was housed in university relations. So I was on a different part of campus. So I always had to make time at a certain time of day to get down to the athletic facilities and do that. But I just think being visible is so important to the coaches that you cover, because they will equate FaceTime with how much you care. And that's important to me in that realm, and passing that on to everybody else is, if the coach knows that you're interested in their sport, then that's probably 50% of the battle of what you need to accomplish every day with them.
Nice. I love it. Talking to me too. I love it. So one of the things that I think is very, very important for Mondays, I've heard, Mondays is like SID's time. And I kind of take that literal, as far as I think it is very important that the SID or communications department as a staff meets together, a standing meeting every Monday. Now, obviously, for some of you guys entering into the field, everyone's setup is different. Some schools might not have this already established or set up and doing. So for you, I think that it's still very important to make sure to set a standing meeting, at least with your director alone. What that do is it kind of helps you with figuring out what's going on during this week. It provides an opportunity to bring up different things in conversations that you were not aware of or didn't think about. And it's like, oh, okay, this is actually a good idea, or that's a good point. Having that meeting to kind of just go back and forth and volley ideas about with is helpful. But another thing, a very underrated thing that I think it does, is it provides the opportunity, it sets the stage for you to now go in and ask about your personal development, whether that's within the department. You can share your goals. You can share what are the things that you want to do. How do you want to progress, not only in the department at that school, but also in your career in general. So I just think that it's a win-win to be able to meet with your director, if not even your whole department as a whole, from a week-to-week basis, knowing what's going on, but also having a space and opportunity to figure out, hey, this is what I want to develop in, or how to develop, or what should my next steps be to get better at XYZ.
I'm going off what Keonte was saying in terms of kind of prepping and beginning of the week stuff on Mondays with meetings. Given our situation here at Central Methodist, we're a small NAI school, and we rely heavily, almost solely on the student worker pool for game day coverage, in-office work, you name it, they probably have some kind of hand in it. So it's them, and then it's also our assistant AD for game ops, then myself as also an assistant athletic director. We are at every single varsity contest, and we're usually at most of the reserve contests that you'll see. So one thing that we do is I sit down with our game ops, head of game ops, his name is Tim Crowley. We sit down usually each Monday, and we actually probably do it more days in the week, but we sit down and we just kind of look at what the schedule is that week in terms of game day coverage. A lot of times we may have 2 or 3 events going on in one day. So we're basically just looking and saying, is everything prepped? Do we have student workers all scheduled? Have they all confirmed? Have we communicated with them? Because if you know student workers, they may or may not check their emails. They may or may not check their phones. It's hard to get in touch with this generation sometimes. So being as thorough as you can and crossing your T's and dotting all of your I's in terms of the student worker pool, what you've got going on that week, especially because it's such a crucial piece for us in our success in our game day coverage. That's something that I really emphasize. And then we also, we have an athletic director. He just finished up his first year. He was our basketball coach for 37 years. So he's fairly new to the position. We sit down each week, which is the AD, the 2 assistant ADs, and our administrative assistant. He'll actually ask, he'll say, okay, what do we got this week? What are we doing? Are there any big things coming up in terms of events that are maybe outside of the game day coverage experience that we need to address? And a lot of the times that'll be, well, we've got some equipment that's malfunctioning. Let's go see if we can get a work order in to see if we can get that fixed. We basically just plan out those different kinds of events. But a big piece for me on Monday, along with what these 2 gentlemen have said, is making sure that your game day coverage is good and ready to go.
Awesome. Thank you. That takes us to Tuesday. On this day, you may focus on things like award nominations and preparing those releases. If your team is competing, you may be reaching out to opposing SIDs, whether you're traveling or they're coming to your place, to exchange information, with getting credentials lined up, pronunciation guides, things like that. This is a good time to kind of get ahead on that so that you're able to start getting that built and don't have to worry it later in the week. But for that, I want to go back to JD and Keonte. Would you guys just mind speaking on these topics about just kind of trying to get ahead on some of the small things and like tips and tricks for award nominations?
Well, the first thing that I would tell you about awards nominations is that's why it's important that you have a good relationship with your coaches, because what you might think would be a great candidate, if you just check with your coach once to make sure that you're on the same page, then you'll begin to get the freedom that you understand what they want. Because again, it's a tricky thing. Maybe they saw something different in their team that week. And again, I think that's really important when you're doing those type of things and getting those releases out. For those of us that, compete early in the week, Tuesday could be a type of day where you either may have a game or you're preparing to get on the road and travel. And if you don't travel, making sure that you have the right information to your opponent, and making sure that you're getting the request in for the proper credentials, because you may travel a creative, you may travel somebody else that's important to the program, and you have to assume and make sure that all of that is taken care of. And so Tuesday is a big event planning day for me, and making sure that I have the right game notes and information if we're streaming or whether we're going to be on TV, just getting those points across and having them available to the people that rely on us.
Yeah, and again, I think it's a good spot right here to throw in the reminder that, the list is fluid, so just because we're talking about Tuesday right now, it's not necessarily it's a mandatory, it has to be on this day. But if not on Monday, I think on Tuesday, a very important thing to do is definitely to get the information that you need from the opposing team if you're hosting. I like to do it on Mondays or as early as possible, just because it gives me another opportunity to send a follow-up email if I need to, before I'm at like a panic, like rushing, trying to get everything all together. Obviously, and this is something that we can get into depending on different questions or different sessions and things like that. But different stat programs and things are changing to where we might not have to reach out as much to get as much information that we used to in the past, but there'll still be some things that you want to make sure that you get. You want to still get your rosters with name pronunciation, so that way you can help your PA person and different things like that. So I think getting it earlier in the week, for sure, Monday or Tuesday, is critical for just your peace and your flow of working during the game, because things are going to come up on game days and stuff like that. You don't want to be something that you probably could have handled on a Monday or Tuesday showing up on a Thursday or Friday.
That's awesome. Yeah, I agree. Like I said, guys, if we have questions, so if you'll toss those in the chat, we'll get to them. I'm actually going to go ahead and jump to two of them real fast from Jake and Brooke, just so we can kind of start to get some of the questions going. Don't get behind on that. Starting with Jake, those of you who have worked both in D1 and in smaller settings, how would you compare the two, and is one more enjoyable? I'll kind of open that up to anybody. But yeah.
I would tell you this. There are only big time people. The big time is wherever you're at. I was at a junior college for 2 years, and I tried to emulate everything that I learned when I would go visit Doug Vance at Kansas when he was in that job and his staff. I would say that a job is enjoyable based on the people that you work with and spend time with. There are a lot of different things about each division that are unique. For Indiana basketball, I have 5 beat writers, newspapers, and 9 websites that cover us. And that's probably one of the largest at the Division I level. At Bowling Green, I might have had 2 writers and a student writer. Each level, while again, probably the biggest difference is the television exposure that we get, you still got to be great at what you do. And you've got to take pride in how you operate. And so understand that regardless of where you're at, you treat it as though it's the biggest thing going. And then the opportunities. I've worked with a lot of people that started off, and coaches, some of the best coaches right now in the country. I remember them when they were coaching Division II or coaching junior college. Again, the longer you're in this profession, you see that people do move up, and everybody's path is different.
That's awesome. Keonte, you want to chime in?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, to his point, fit does matter. The people that you're working with and who you grow close to and stuff, that part does matter. However, I will also say it just depends on what your own balance is, what you like to handle. So I was at Texas A&M Kingsville. That was my first full-time job. It was a 1-person shop for a while until I came in. And then once I got there, it was only me and the director. And we were covering, 15 or so sports, so we have almost 5-6 sports just between the 2 of us. Then I go to, I had a couple other Division II stops in there, but then Texas State was my D1 mid-major school that I went to, and I had 3 sports. Now I'm at LSU and I have 2 sports. Things are different. There's less travel when you have a whole lot of sports versus when you have only a couple of sports and things like that. But I personally will say that I do like now being probably at a bigger school, but I would not I love that I started at a smaller school. I was able to really learn a lot about the industry, learn different areas of what I had to do or what other departments have to do at a small school. Whereas if you start at a big school, you know, you're kind of limited to your own thing. So I think it just depends on your season of what, you know, where you're at and what you want to do. I think there is a time where it's great to know as much as you can, and that helps you become more marketable. And then there's another aspect where it might be fine for you to become a specialist at this point of the career. But again, to JD's point, you know, it's really about the people. It's really about the fit. And then from there, you can know and see what those differences are and how you like to work and what that looks like for you.
I'm just going to chime in real fast on what you said right there about being able to go and work at smaller sports or schools and see everything, get your hands-on experience in different areas that you might not get being at a big school. I've only ever been at Tennessee and Mississippi State in my career, so I've only ever seen it from the SEC level. But I often encourage a lot of our student interns here at Tennessee, like, hey, during the summer, if you're not from Knoxville or in the area and you're not going to intern with us, try and get on somewhere at least once in your career, whether it's a semi-pro baseball team that's local to your area, or we have a couple people that are doing some professional summer camps, which is just a little bit different, to see those experiences and kind of get a good idea of like, there's more to it than just what we do at the University of Tennessee. And I will say too, that like there are benefits massively to be able to do everything. I've never really had to do graphics. And so this year, on year 9 of being in the industry, I really emphasized trying to like learn Photoshop and get better at it, because I just never had to this point, because we've always had the resources to do it. But at the same time, that kind of doesn't set me up for success in this industry and how it's developing. So it goes both ways. So don't feel like just going to a small school is a negative connotation, because it's certainly not. There is massive value to being at smaller schools and getting that experience. And it translates. So I just wanted to chime that in. For the next question from Brooke, I'm going to go to Rachel on this one. Since you kind of touched on it, for schools that rely more on their student workers, would you recommend them attending the department meeting or holding a separate meeting for them?
Yeah, so usually at the beginning of each fall, actually the beginning of each semester, but it mainly happens in the fall, we'll send out job applications for our student workers. Most of the time, they're going to be students that we've worked with before, so it's really just paperwork and getting them set up and ready to go. And that's usually the time that we'll kind of meet with them and interview them to see kind of what their skill sets are, what they like, what they don't like. And that's where we really get to kind of know them and meet with them. But in terms of a department meeting, we usually don't have them come to those, because those are just mainly for your upper admins, just to kind of get into the nitty gritty stuff. But oftentimes what our student workers will do is they'll come into either my office or Tim's office and they'll say, hey, is there any work here within the next like week or two? And Tim's got a spreadsheet that basically lines out, hey, here are the games, here's what we need covered. And they'll come in and they'll actually pick out what shifts that they want. And that's an opportunity for them to go in and ask questions about a specific job or something that they haven't done before. I've had student workers that have done tickets or concessions, and they actually want to run one of our broadcasts or take photos. So those are the opportunities that they can come in and ask questions. And I would say that's more of probably the time that we meet. And it just depends on if they're younger, if they're freshmen or sophomores, they might have more questions. They might want to meet a little bit more and need a little bit more of a debriefing on what that game day experience looks like or what you need in the office, versus your juniors and seniors. I've had a couple really good ones that have just graduated. They'll just text me. They're like, you need me tonight? I'll be like, yep. And they're like, okay, we'll see you there. And I don't usually talk to them the rest of the night, because they know their roles. They know what's expected of them. They know my expectations. And so I can just delegate those responsibilities, which I'll get into. I think that might be a topic that we cover on Friday, but most of the time they'll come in and we'll do separate meetings with them, but it's more of just they'll drop in if my door's open, and they'll ask me questions if needed. But I've got an open door policy where they can come in anytime. Most of them have my number and email, so they can just text or call if they've ever got any questions. But in terms of meeting as a department, that's usually just for our upper administration. And then those individual student workers, we never really do a big student group student worker meeting, but they'll come in and schedule separate times if they need to talk with us.
Awesome. And I know the original plan was we were going to do questions after Wednesday, but we'll go ahead and touch on one more question, and then we'll do a second set of questions and answers at the very end, and we'll wrap it up. So for our final question before we move on, we'll go to Vid. They asked, with Monday being a day to organize and plan for the week, what are some methods that you have found successful with that? And I'll open that up to anybody.
For me, I can be a little old school. So I like pen to pad. And for me, it's literally writing out a list. If I can write out a list on a Sunday going into the Monday, that's like the phenomenal start to my week. But sometimes if it has to be Monday morning, writing out a list for what I have to do that day, or what are the top priorities of the week, and then how can I break those things down? That's what really works well with me. I like to see the list of things I have to do and just kind of check them off as I go. It provides an opportunity for me to have everything for the most part right there in one spot, whereas I'm not trying to operate just off the top of my head, because we will forget something. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, if you don't write something down, type it up, have it in your calendar, something, whatever method works best for you, you will forget it. So me just kind of pinning it, that really helps me be organized for my Monday / just the week in general.
For you younger SIDs, or if you're going to get into the business, and you like whiteboards, I would invest in a whiteboard. I've got one over here, and I see Josh has one behind his desk. So does Keonte. JD, I'm sure you've got one too, but that is my best friend. Every now and then, actually a lot of the times, people will come in and they'll demand time from you, or they'll ask time from you. And sometimes I'll get a little bit scatterbrained, and I always say, okay, what am I doing next? I always refer to the whiteboard right here next to me, because that's got my list of things that I do each day. And it also lets the people that come into your office that are maybe asking you to do something, if you've got a full whiteboard or a full notepad of things and they see that, they'll probably back off a little and say, okay, Rachel's probably a little bit backed up right now. Let me, if she gives me a response that says, hey, this might have to wait a little bit, and I don't necessarily like that response, well, you've got some backup because you got a full whiteboard of things that have to get done beforehand. Now, that depends on each situation, but a whiteboard is your friend, and it's certainly been my friend my first 3 years.
I think for me, what I tried to do, and I started this very early on, I don't define days. For me, the business is Labor Day to Memorial Day. And there is no such thing for me as Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There are game days. There are travel days. There are prep for a home event day. And that's how I've been able to survive 37 years in this business, is I understand that you have to stay 2 and 3 weeks ahead and not get behind. And so by doing that, I think that's been a key to my ability to maintain what I'm doing. But I don't look at any day whatsoever for specifics. Most of the time, we always played football games on Saturday, but we were part in the MAC of the first group that really started playing Thursday night football. So it changed how we had to do things during the week. And so that's the thing about being in this profession, is understand in sports, we go all the time. We go on Christmas. We go on your parents' 50th anniversary. There's a lot of different things you've got to do, and you just have to have the mindset to understand, if you love this profession and love doing what we do, you learn to work within the parameters of what this profession is.
Awesome. And that was kind of where we were going with Wednesday, was exactly that. That every day is kind of different, and especially the week structure as you go throughout the season. Like JD said, basically between Labor Day to Memorial Day, it's fair game. But even then, that doesn't necessarily hold true because soccer and volleyball start before then, and it's past Memorial Day and softball's on right now. We have baseball and track and field still going. So the timelines, it's still like every week's different for almost the entire year, other than for a little bit during the summer. And just the saying of stay 2 weeks ahead versus 3 days behind. I mean, you can't pound that in enough, because if you get behind and heaven forbid you don't make it out of a week without getting something done and you push it to next week, it's only going to compound and it's only going to make it harder to get to it. So staying ahead is just so valuable. And if like there's one key point in this session, it is with your work week and your office work, always stay ahead and stay prepared, stay organized. I mean, that is absolutely huge. And we'll kind of move on to Thursday now. You know, this day is kind of all about the smaller things for the sake of this topic, not in general in a work week, but we're going to talk about like making sure that everything's done, everything's updated on your website, whether it's stats, updating your bios, your previews are out for your events, everything like that. I want to talk to Rachel and Keonte. We'll start with Rachel and then we'll go Keonte. Can y'all just offer some advice when it comes to whether it's preparing graphics, keeping the website maintenance up to date, getting stat files and bios updated, and so on? Can you guys just talk about that process and how important it is?
So usually Thursday for me, it's a time that for a small institution, I handle all of the game day scripts, the programs, any printed materials that we get out for the week. That's usually a time that I'll send all that off to print. So I'm working on finalizing, making sure that spellings are all correct for all the rosters. Because any given day or weekend, you might have 4 or 5 events going on. And because we use the print shop, which is fortunately just right across the hall from me, so it's not too far of a walk to get there. That's usually a day that I will use to make sure that all of those things are shored up and ready to go. And it also gives you that day to buffer. So if something happens, and you need to print something out quickly on Friday, you've got that little bit of buffer time to go in and make sure that's all printed and all done. And I'll usually delegate some of this stuff to student workers, interns, graduate assistants. I'm lucky enough that I've got one in my office to do that. But in terms of advice, I would think on any day that this could apply to in the week, just make sure that you're prioritizing what you need to get done first before the 4th or 5th need of someone else, maybe, because at the end of the day, like Josh said, if you don't get to it this week, you're going to have to get to it next week, and then it just snowballs and becomes a bigger snowball, and eventually you're overwhelmed. I'm sure we've all gone through that at some point, and we've learned the hard way. I certainly have on a number of occasions, but Thursday for me, it's really a time to make sure that the scripts, everything is printed out, ready to go. That's probably one last time that Tim and I will go through a check. We'll make sure everything is squared up for the weekend. Equipment for streaming is at whatever location it needs to be, so you don't have to scramble around on game day. And again, shoring up student workers. I can't emphasize enough, but at a small institution, when you rely on those guys, they are your best friends. They can be enemies as well, depending on how good or bad they are. But in terms of advice, like I said before, just making sure that you prioritize what you need to get done for each of those days, because if you don't, it's going to keep snowballing, and then you'll be in trouble.
Yeah, one of the how I look at Thursday, in quotations, Thursday is the day before game day. So on the day before game day, whatever day that actually falls on, I think it's very important to make sure if you have game notes that you're printing out, that you're printing out game notes, that you're doing all of your printing operations and stuff done on that day and not the day of. Even if like you play Friday at 6 o'clock, try not to. Sometimes, you can't help it, but try not to print at, 10, noon or whatever on Friday, just in case if, all of a sudden you run out of toner. Do we have enough toner already that's refilled? Or we don't have enough paper, or, now we got a jam and like now I'm rushing because I got to do other game day setup stuff. And now I got to fix the jam and the printer and things like that. So I think it's very important if you can print off the day before Thursday, the game, that would be a big helpful thing too. And another thing was, and I know this isn't necessarily committed to a day, it depends on your time of season and stuff like that, but your summer workloads are very important. It is a time for you to definitely reset. It is a time for you to definitely get some development, reflect and see the things that you did this year. What do you like? What do you want to get better? So on and so forth. But one, for your smaller schools, definitely is your time to try to crank out a lot of work with updating record books and bios and stuff, coaching bios, things like that. Is very important for the summertime. And I say that for the small schools because one of the things I really like, if you're able to do it for the small schools, if you can do it, you're going to save yourself like a whole lot of time, especially when you are with the program for year 2, year 3, and so on. But what I have started doing is after my season ends for the sport, I have 2 weeks that I just try to do and crunch out things that I can related to record books and bios and stuff. Your career records, your season records, your game records, all of that is going to be the same after the last play of your season, all the way until the beginning of next season. It's not going to change. So if you update it earlier while it's fresh, you don't have to go back and try to remember everything, and you just update at least some of it. So then that way, when it's time for you to really start working on that record book in the summer, now you're not having to worry about, oh, what was the career highs? What was this? What was that? Now you can just focus on, okay, what's the roster look like for this next upcoming year? What's our schedule for this next upcoming year? And things like that. So that's something that I love to take advantage of the summer, try to hit like those first 2 weeks, even if you have to do it just for a week. But if you could do a little bit of front end work right out of your season, that should be able to kind of help set a stage for a smoother transition when your season comes into play, and that's when you take advantage of that in the summer.
Awesome. Thank you all. And then finally, that brings us to Friday. And we've kind of already talked about this. Rachel just mentioned it, but we'll go to her for it. It's your last chance, really, because it is per expectations on a Friday is like it's basically game day. And if it's not, you're to Saturday. And if you're going to avoid coming in early in the morning on a Saturday into the office, you want to have everything done by Friday. So it's might as well be your game day mindset of let's go, it's showtime. But the reason I want to talk to Rachel about this is because you're at an AI school, you rely so heavily on its students, as you've already mentioned. That's your game plan. I guess from your perspective, you rely on students to help you cover these events, but still you oversee everything. How do you, as the head of the office, as an assistant athletic director, how do you handle making sure all these events are covered and that everything's ready and that nothing falls through the cracks on every given week? And like you said, there's could be 3 to 4 games a day. Just talk about your how you handle those expectations and make sure everything's covered.
I think the first thing is you got to be thorough, especially in this business. I handle 24 sports. I came from a school down at A&M Corpus Christi where I was able to give a little bit more coverage, but I only handled 5. So that was kind of a wake-up call. But I was fortunate that I had worked at an institution like Baker, which again, that's in the Kansas City area. I'm not too far from home, where I could see kind of what that looks like. And I've had great mentors and people that I have looked up to that have really helped me set the expectations and set the mindset of what I want my department to look like. And the first thing is you're just thorough. You make sure that everything is, again, you make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, because at the end of the day, if something goes well, it's on you. If something goes bad, it's still on you. You can't, I think people sometimes would want to blame others, but at the end of the day, it's your department, you're overseeing it all. So being super thorough, and then finding those student workers or those graduate assistants that you can delegate and you can give them initiative, because at the end of the day, I think any of our panelists and Josh can say the same thing. You might just be a one-man shop, but you can't do it all yourself. It's literally impossible. We've tried to do it. It does not work, or it does not go well. So finding those student workers and those graduate assistants that want to take initiative and want to take responsibility. I found a women's wrestler. She ended up becoming a manager for them, but she ran every single one of my baseball broadcasts, and for the most part, all of the women's wrestling broadcasts, and really stepped up big for me. Unfortunately, she's a senior. She graduated, so I'm going to have to find some other people. But finding those folks that want to take initiative and want to get into maybe not necessarily this business, but they want to do something similar. And she's actually in a communications role now at a junior college doing something similar. And she said that it's because working with me kind of gave her that. So finding those student workers, and sometimes they're hard to find, but the longer that you're at an institution, if you can get out and speak to classes, if you can just be out and be visible in the community, those kids will start to know who you are. And because you're at 99%, if not 100% of their games anyway, from an NAIA standpoint, they're going to know who you are, and they're going to see what you do on a day in and day out basis. So identifying those student workers, same with the graduate assistant. It seems like they're rare nowadays, especially at small NAIA schools. But if you can find a good one and you can give them that responsibility of handling a sport or two, that takes a little bit of the pressure off of you, obviously with some oversight on their part, but empowering others to feel like they can take charge and take control of a situation is your best friend, along with being super thorough, just as kind of the straight answer, but empowering those students, empowering people around you to want to take initiative and to want to do well.
Awesome. Let's jump right into questions. We have about 9 more minutes, so we'll try and get through as many of them as possible. I know we have a few. Up first, we'll go to Armando. For any of you, what was your preferable method or approach in communicating with your coaches and teams as a younger primary contact for the first time in your career? What did you learn from those experiences? I'll leave that for any of you guys to kind of take on.
I think most importantly is the FaceTime. And after that, you find out whether they're good at returning texts or they prefer a phone call. That's knowing what you need to do. The other thing is when you have communication, it can't always be because you want or need something, because they see you. And I may have to bring some difficult information to a coach. I don't ever want them to say, "Oh God, you're here," meaning that I've got something bad for them. I think it's just getting an opportunity to know your coaches and know what works. A lot of times when I had football, often there was an assistant coach that was designated as the contact with the sports information department. And so that's how I would go to first. Then we would go meet with the head coach. But you got to have FaceTime, and it's got to be consistent.
I think it's easy for SIDs to want to silo in our little office, in our offices, and just kind of work on the stuff that we need to. But I'm kind of in a position where I'm at a school where there's been a heavy amount of turnover in sports information for various reasons that I won't get into. But I think kind of what JV was going on, that face-to-face is so important, especially at my school. I've got some coaches that have been here for 30 or 40 years. The expectations are high in terms of winning. And so you've got to earn their respect, and you've got to go out and talk with them and kind of show your stuff. And I think that's where work ethic is a big piece of it. If they see the work that you're putting in on day in and day out basis, those face-to-face meetings won't be as difficult to have as you go down the line. It's taken me a couple years, but I've been able to build some really good relationships with some coaches that are maybe a little more difficult to work with. You'll run into all coaches. It's just natural that they've got a type A personality and they're go-getters. But if you show them the work ethic that you've got and you go see them on a day-to-day basis, at the end of the day, coaches just really want to talk about their teams and themselves. And I can't blame them, especially if your teams are really good. They want to talk to someone about it. So even if it's just a casual conversation, stopping by, that's all the better as well.
It's great news. We have about 40 more minutes of time available. I thought we were on a little bit more of a time crunch. We don't have to go that full time to panelists, but we do have a little bit more time than I initially thought. Going on to our next question, we're going to Liz. Do you have advice about not rushing through work during in-office time? I feel like many days I get everything done in the first few hours and then have a lot of downtime that I don't know how to use effectively. One thing I'll chime in and say early with that, I always love to ask other people in the office, hey, do you need help with anything? Once I have my stuff done, I do swimming, diving, and rowing. I will gladly help out wherever I can. If in the fall, it's helping out with a football press conference. If in the spring, it's, hey, do you need help with game notes or anything for basketball or some of your spring sports? Just wherever I'm available. If I'm free, I love to help other people out and try and get them ahead on things. What do you guys think?
I was going to say, I think that is a great suggestion. I think that helps build even more camaraderie within the department itself. So I think that's a really good idea. And I'll also kind of still align from JD's school of thought as far as, you're talking about walking around and stuff like that. I would go to my team's practice, like walking around and going to their offices and things like that is one thing for the coaches. But a lot of, we didn't really get into these different things, but a lot of what we do is also either trying to pitch stories to local media or, trying to come up with something to give maybe even to our university communications department, if not writing on our own website itself. So I think if you actually go to practice and you spend some time at practice at the beginning of practice, you'll probably find more times than not, the more you do it, that you'll end up having small talk and conversations with the players. While you're in practice, you're probably learning and catching on to not only the game plan or different things, but the identity of the team itself, what they're standing on, what they rally on, that can help you on social media captions, that can help you just push out different types of information, or it just gives you more knowledge on the team to share again with other people, whether that's beat writers or anything like that. So I think, again, it doesn't mean you have to go to every single practice. As far as a practice goes, if you can hit 1 or 2 a week, that would be good. But if you have a lot of time like that, I don't think it's terrible to, go to practice for a decent amount of time, go spend some time there, kind of see the flow of how practice is and things like that. I think that's a very efficient way to use your time that might not show up efficient in that moment. But then when you're thinking of different things, you're in-game tweeting or, you're writing your previews and you're able to give a little bit more of a glimpse inside, because now it's like you really know this team and the personalities and stuff like that, because you actually been and spent time with the players, the student athletes, not just the coaching staff.
I would tell you that increase your value to the program. If you do have extra time, maybe there are some things that you can do that help the team that you're working with. An example is this, and this is the number one rule for me, for everybody. Make sure on your website that when your statistics are updated, you have a PDF version on there. Because a lot of times the coach may want to be able to get a printable roster, printable stats, and if you don't have PDF versions of those, it makes it really difficult. Now, when I go back and say this, here's what I would do if I had downtime. I might go get some box scores of some of the key games that the team that we're preparing for played. I might go and I've got a statistical program that I can get a team's last 5 games. Okay. Now I know not everybody's going to have time to do this, but what I do is I try to use that time to create myself of having more value to the program. So if you have extra time, try to create more value for yourself with that particular program.
That was awesome. Yeah, I agree 1,000% on what both of y'all just said. Up next, we'll go to Allison. How do you handle situations where your coach's expectations are unreasonable, such as sending camp information on Monday and expecting everything ready to go by the next day? I will say I agree. I wish I had kind of had this conversation with someone early on in my career. One of my first coaches that I ever worked with was very big on players winning awards at all costs. Like they had to win no matter what. Didn't matter if there was someone who had better stats and was the better player. One thing it taught me on that front was just a learning lesson from that. And that's what I'd say. Like, if you feel like you have these expectations, there's usually a way you can learn from it. For me, it was, I think when I come to nominating players for awards now, I go all out. Whether it's looking for any detail that gives me an edge or trying to look up and see who the other good candidates are and where I think that my person or athlete has a better advantage in certain area than another player. I'll give an example of if it's like basketball. If I think my team has played better defenses statistically in the rankings, I'll use that to my advantage to say we've played better competition than another player that's up for an award. I just felt like that made me better. But at the same time, I agree, Allison. I wish I would have asked this question of how do you maneuver some of these things that are more unreasonable or just harder to accommodate questions. So, Keonte, I know you kind of chimed in on that. So I'll start with you.
Yeah. This is one of those questions that's like, it's just kind of sticky. It's not really a cookie cutter approach. It's a lot of, what it was kind of mentioned earlier about good fit matters, communication, relational matters, relationships matter. By this time, hopefully you have done different things like going and giving that FaceTime that JD mentioned and stuff, because all of those things matter when it's time to have difficult type of conversations like that. It also depends on your school size and, what you have. If you have like 2 or 3 sports in season at one time, it's kind of hard to do something for an off season thing. And I'm saying that in terms of this question was referring to like camp information. If it's camp information, that sounds like something that's for a team that's out of season. Usually don't have camp information really going out for in-season type things or programs. So with that is just, trying to figure out the best way to communicate, but to let them know, and being firm on your stance too. Like, I will get to this. I'm in season right now with a couple of different sports. I just got this information yesterday. I'm working on it, but I have to make sure I fulfill the obligations to my in-season sports right now, because we're just already on a schedule. Just like if it was you in season, this is how I would handle it for you as well. So I will get to it. It will get done for sure. But if you can give me a little bit more time, I'll be very grateful for that. And a lot of it is just kind of figuring out, how to word your situation and how to speak with the coach that's asking for the different things. But we do have to also be at a realization where we can't be all things to all people at all times. And because we can't do that, there is an aspect of us having to show, we cannot be pushovers. I'm not saying that we can't please our coaches. That is what we are here to do too, and to serve the program as best we can. But everybody has some limitations when it comes to time, and there's only so much. And so maybe even setting the standard at the beginning of the years, having meetings at the beginning, having meetings at the end. But at the beginning, when you're setting up those meetings, like, hey, I know some things are going to happen where it's kind of a last second thing, but if I can get a heads up, a couple of days, few days notice on some of these things that might not be as like time crunch, I would appreciate that. Trying to go through and set a schedule of what are the things that are like mandatory that we know are coming up? We know that we have to have game day tweets or game day graphics, or, we have to have player of the week type, things. So create a template so that way that stuff is kind of already semi-done. We're just filling it in for the one individual or the stats about that one player, because when you do those things that are going to happen early on, again, summer projects, if you can figure out, say if you're doing graphics, you can figure out what that look that you want for in the summer, create the great game day, create the player of the week, create your all region, create as much as you can in a template form. So that way, all you have to do is kind of plug and play while you're in season. And now you don't have to think about trying to make something from scratch in the middle of the season, and then other stuff that comes during the season. And now it's like my plate is like overwhelmed. So there's a lot of ways to try to handle the situation. A lot of it is being proactive, and there is no one right approach to it. But one thing is having to, be organized and doing a lot of things on the front end, like the FaceTime and, investing yourself with them. So that way, when it does come time to have a difficult conversation, you can be more confident in yourself to do and stand up for yourself, and hopefully have the backing from your department head, because those conversations will come and will happen.
Yeah.
Here's a great thing about being in Indiana. We can't work on camps. Okay. We can't help a coach with camps. The camps can't even be on our department websites because they make money. And so I don't know your situation again. And I know not every camp is lucrative, but if a coach wants you to help with camp, then there should be some remuneration coming your way. I know that's not the case in 95% of everything. But camps, our university recognized that, wait a minute, you're going to pay exactly what you have to pay for facilities, exactly what you're going to do for this, and you can't use resources of the university to promote something that you're going to individually profit from.
Up next, we'll go to Jake. I'm starting an internship this August. What advice would you have for a beginner? I didn't work for my university's athletic department as an undergrad, so most of my experience is just in writing game recaps and previews and less of all the other stuff. And he added a notion that he will also be a primary contact for a few sports. One thing before I start is I'll say that Jake has been pretty active in coming to these sessions. So, he's been on top of trying to gain this education. He's not going into this of like, this is my first time seeing these things. He's been doing all the right steps. So, Jake, again, awesome job. I'm glad you were able to find a landing spot. I know you were on the last two sessions I've moderated. You've been doing a lot of the proper stuff. I think you're going to find pretty soon that you have a better understanding and are going to be pretty capable based on what you've heard other people and their experiences when it comes to doing the job than you probably think you are. But yeah, there probably will be some learning curves. So for any of you guys, what advice do you have for Jake?
That's where I started. I started as an intern in our SID office, and while Jake, I know it's a little bit different for you, I came in with really just a love and appreciation for sports. All the teams at Baker were really good, and I was like, well, I want to get involved in this. And so I think for anyone trying to break in the field, just be okay with being uncomfortable and learning something new. This is a job where you're going to have a lot of different skill sets that you are going to learn, and it may seem like it's overwhelming at first, but I think it's already great for you that you've got some experience in writing, because that's a big piece that I think in this day and age with a lot more people doing graphics and a lot of stuff on social media, I think writing is a big piece still, because people want to know the stories of what's going on with their student athletes. So with that, you've already got kind of a great start, and that other stuff will come with time. And depending on what your relationship looks like with your supervisor, I would just talk with them. Use them as a guide, use them as a mentor. I've done that for my entire career. I still talk to my original supervisor Tyler Price, he's now the commissioner at the Heart of America Athletic Conference, and he's very active in CSC as well as the NAI, Sports Information Directors of America. I still talk to him probably a couple times every other week, maybe. I've got his number saved in my phone. So utilizing those people and building a network of folks that you can talk to and that you can rely on, I think will be the biggest piece. And the other things, the day-to-day tasks that come with being an SID and being a primary contact for a sport, that'll just come with time. You just have to learn it as you go in. I'm very much a planner. I don't like baptism by fire, but this industry is baptism by fire times a million. You just got to jump in and you just have to do it. And that's the best way that you'll learn. And coaches may not love that initially, but again, that's how we've got to learn, and that's how you've got to grow. And I think if you're just if you're comfortable with being uncomfortable and learning some new skill sets along the way, I think you'll be just fine.
Yeah, the writing piece is a big piece. So if you already have the skills and you like doing that, you understand that part of your job or aspect, that's gonna take you a long way already. But like Rachel said, basically reps will erase doubt. So you're gonna learn, like you're gonna be faced with some stuff this next upcoming year that you just haven't faced before, and you don't know what you don't know, and you're gonna mess up on some things, but you're gonna learn some things, and then you're gonna do it again, or the opportunity is gonna come and do it again. So now you're getting reps, and the more reps you get, the less doubt you're gonna have. So just enjoy the moment, enjoy, being in a position now that you have an internship, that you're getting this real-time experience, and that you're about to get your reps up, because then that's where your confidence is going to come. The more you do stuff, the more you see stuff, and then after a while it's going to be like, okay, now I know how to be efficient. I know what I'm really good at, what I like to do, but I also know what things that are coming up that I have to do too. So yeah, just congratulations and get those reps in.
Awesome. Up next, we'll go to Nick. Nick asks, what's a good method of planning out responsibilities, previews, graphics, etc., when info that you need from other teams' SIDs can come at different times throughout the week?
One of the things that I do, and again, this is part of the 2 weeks ahead, on my calendar, I'm sending out information or requesting information 2 to 3 weeks before. And so if there's something in particular, maybe a logo you need, or a picture of a coach, or a picture of a key player that you need, I try to get on top of that early. The other thing is, this is why I'm talking about the importance of making sure that your website is updated, that you can get generally what you need, a roster, the stats, individual game stats. Those things are so important. And so I would tell you this, you tend to only worry about who you're playing on Wednesday, if it's Monday, but you've got to have a couple hours in the day where you're focused on stuff that's going to be going on maybe 2-3 weeks down the road, or if it's even a bigger event that you're having, maybe you're hosting a tournament, that you've got to get in front of it pretty quickly. And that way it'll make it easier for you to get those done.
Up next, we'll go to Brooke. As an intern in the athletic comms department, how can we earn the trust of the coaches? I often create graphics and take stats for the teams and think it would be important to have a good relationship with the coaches while not overstepping boundaries.
The first thing I would do, if you're trying to build a relationship with a coach as an intern, I'd first go talk to your direct supervisor. So whether that be your SID, and just check with them and see if it's okay, if you can maybe set up a separate meeting, or just drop in and say hi to that coach. Because while they usually see their SIDs on a day-to-day basis, they may not see you every day. So they may be a little taken back that you stopped by, not for a bad reason, but just surprised because they're not familiar with you yet. So I think meeting with your supervisor first and seeing if it's okay if you can set up a meeting with that coach, depending on how involved you want to get. or even just go into their office and say, hey, Rachel, can you take me down? I really want to visit with Coach Nichols on this, or Coach Gala. Have them take you around to the different coaches that you want to meet. Depending on who all you work with, you may want to meet with all of them, because it's easier for coaches to put names with faces once they've seen you. But yeah, and then just sitting down with those coaches, maybe even a separate time, and just see what if there's anything that they would want to see from you, kind of like a traditional meeting that SIDs have with their coaches. Maybe you could have something similar. It may be something where you work with the assistant coaches a little bit more, or graduate assistants, and that's a great way to build those relationships, and coaches will eventually see that too. I was a graduate assistant at Baker for a couple of years, but I actually worked a lot with our wrestling programs and our softball programs, and I gave them a lot of good coverage, and I know they appreciated that. And that was just by me going and talking, one, with my SID to see if he was okay with me expanding my role a little bit, and two, working with those coaches and giving them a little bit more face time than what they would normally get with maybe a one-person shop.
Yeah, I think Rachel hit it right on the money with a lot of that. I think it's very at first I was going to say, well, you just go to their offices and introduce yourself and so on and so forth. But I actually think it is it's wise to first let your director or the director of communications know that this is what you want to do. I say that because the reality is, like, hey, you're going to meet the coach, and it's going to be a great, meeting that you get to get closer and deal with the coaches more. But when they do know you and they know what you do, they are going to start contacting you directly for different things. So, you do want to make sure that you're on the same page with your director and making sure, like, well, what's our balance needs to be and things like that. And then have meetings with those coaches, like Rachel said, and see what are some of the things that they want. And you might come out of the meeting with like 10 things that they want. Well, we're not going to do all 10 things, I'm sure, but you can pick off and do a couple of, things, 3, 4, whatever that you can handle. And hopefully it get to a point where you now create a system to where, okay, now this is like flowing easily now. So now let's go back to the list. Oh, they wanted this. Well, let's see if we can now incorporate one new thing once we have a few things already established. So I think, that kind of organization is something that would also be beneficial too, but just be aware, getting in and having that good relationship with the coaches and stuff is admirable and good to do. But once you start to go ahead and try to introduce yourself individually, you are going to open up yourself up to more work, which is something that we don't run from. We don't run from more work. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it's just like, you're going to introduce yourself now to a spot where you don't want to become a yes man or woman, but you also, want to be a great contributor to the program. So you're going to have balance and some maturity. And then some of the conversations, you put yourself in that line now to have more of those difficult conversations sometimes. Again, nothing bad to say like you should run away from it, but just letting you know the realities of it so you can go into it knowing, okay, I'm ready to take it to the next level, and this is what's part of it.
Awesome. JD, you want to add in?
Yeah, I was going to throw in, when you talk about crossing boundaries, I think if you're new in this profession, a lot of times everybody that's been in this has had a coach or two, or may have somebody at the school that they're really close with personally, and they go out to eat or they spend time together on the road. The one thing I would recommend that you try to avoid more than anything is being someone that the coach vents to, maybe about their strategy or their personnel, because you need to stay away from that. That's not, you don't have any impact on what plays they run or who's getting playing time and who isn't. And that's just a small thing. Try to, keep your blinders on and keep everything to your work. When it's personal time, make it personal time. How is your family? Are you going home to visit your parents? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? I just find that the best way to maintain and keep those good relationships is that it takes a long time before you can get into that realm where maybe a coach is comfortable talking to you about different things. But especially early on when you're starting, try to stay away from those two things in my mind.
Awesome. Well, guys, that's going to wrap us up for today's first session. Just want to say a huge thank you to our presenters, JD, Keonte, and Rachel. You guys were awesome. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to come out and do this, offer up some of your insights and experiences that you guys have had from your successful careers so far, moving forward as well. Again, for everyone else, this will be available on demand later today or early next week. And at the same time, though, don't forget that we have a second session that comes up in an hour and 15 minutes. That'll be at 3:30 Eastern time start. That one will be about creating and maintaining relationships with coaches and staff. So I know that was a few questions we've already gotten in this one. So take what you've learned here and then also build on it with our next session. We have another great group lined up for that one, and it should be really, really good. Tomorrow, Friday, our final live camp session will be at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and they're going to talk about game day operations preparation. And then later, you guys will we're going to send out a pre-recorded video to everyone. That's kind of like our fourth session, but feel free to watch that at your earliest convenience. That session is going to be on resources and advice for new professionals. Keonte was a huge factor in creating that video. So big thank you to him. Everybody that's seen it has had great things to say about it. So we really encourage you guys to take time to watch that as well. Has a lot of tips and helpful information about our organization, College Sport Communicators, and kind of our member benefits like awards and contests, information on statistics, the Academic All-America program, and much, much more. So definitely be on the lookout for that as well. Thanks again for being with us today. We really appreciate you guys. Hope to see you again, and we hope to see you at the upcoming sessions. Thank you all so much. Y'all have a wonderful day and enjoy your summers.
Thank you, guys.